Hey everybody, welcome back to the kitchen. We are now in season 2, episode 4. And before I get started, let me just say thank you to everyone who made episode 3, which was the pizza salad and the spinach dip, the most watched Paula's Kitchen we've ever had. Over 4,000 views. Thank you so much. You guys are great. Plus, a lot of you made those two things and sent us photos, and we love that. All right, so number 4 in our by request series, we are going to be making a recipe that was sent to us from Katrin over in Germany. It's called Russian cheesecake. Oh my gosh, really excited. Never made this before, you guys, and so it's going to be a fun adventure. First off though, check out, I haven't modeled a new apron in a while. This is from Stephanie in Shetland. It has puffins on it, which are of course famous in Shetland. And I just received this a couple days ago, so it is going to be baptized here on the Russian cheesecake. All right, as always, let's talk ingredients. The crust for our cheesecake is going to be flour, sugar, cocoa, which I'm intrigued by, some baking powder, butter, and egg. And then the filling is going to be cottage cheese, not cream cheese, and milk, some vanilla pudding powder, some vanilla, eggs, and butter. And yes, we are going to use a whole pound of butter in this recipe. Full disclosure, you guys, this is not a low-cal dessert. All right, as always, the first thing we do, let's get our dry ingredients ready. Before we start the crust, one thing, because I'm doing a substitution. The original recipe calls for curd cheese. Curd cheese is really hard to find in the United States, so I looked on the web to see what is a valid substitution. And the thing that they recommend, especially for cheesecakes, is to use cottage cheese, but run it through a sieve because the cottage cheese is a little wetter than the curd cheese. So I have a sieve set up here, and I'm going to need 500 grams of the cottage cheese. So I'm going to put it into this sieve, and I'm going to let that drain while I'm making my crust. This is a little bit more. Each one of these little cups that I bought at the Whole Foods Market is 150 grams. So that means I've got about 600 in the 4 cups. And so I will measure that out to make sure that I get 500 when all is said and done. I bought 2 low-fat and 2 regular on the cottage cheese. They're super duper fresh. And never ever had cheesecake made out of cottage cheese. So this is really a discovery. Honestly, they're not very wet, so I'm not sure that we're going to get a lot of drainage, but we will let that go while we make our crust. Before we get started, let's talk measurements. Because this recipe came from Katrin in Germany, the original recipe, perhaps it's even from Russia, is in grams. And of course in the US we don't do grams, so Katrin had done conversions for me. However, I actually happen to have a scale that does gram measures as well as ounces, and so I decided it's an opportunity to be precise, and I actually measured the dry ingredients off camera using gram measurements. So first of all, 300 grams of all-purpose flour, which turns out to be a little over 2 1/4 cups, and I'll put all this in the description box for you. We need sugar, 1 cup of sugar, which is 200 grams. We need some cocoa powder, which is a 1/2 cup or 40 grams, and then we're going to throw in a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. Those are the dries. And then we're also going to use 1 3/4 sticks of soft butter and 1 egg for our crust. So let's get going. Turning on my oven, according to Katrin's recipe, 320 degrees Fahrenheit. So get that started heating up, and we are ready now to start with our crust for the cheesecake. All right, 1 3/4 sticks of butter, 16 tablespoons, 200 grams, however you want to measure that. Let me double check as I go along. Yes, okay. And then I'm going to beat that a little bit with my electric mixer. I'm going to do a cup of sugar, 200 grams of sugar, and then we're going to add the rest of our ingredients as well as the egg. So let's get going. That's already nice and soft. I've had it out for a while, so let's just get some of that sugar in there. All right, sugar in the bowl. All right, I'm going to break my egg in the bowl now. I also want to give a shout out to this poor man behind the camera. 2 days ago on the treadmill, he twisted his knee and pulled a muscle, and he is precariously standing pretty much on one leg to record this video. So cheers to my cameraman. All right, that is looking lovely and creamy. Now I'm going to fold in my dries by hand. So I'm going to set my mixer aside and get my spurtle out, and we'll be right back. Note about equipment. I actually had to purchase an 11-inch cake pan because I did not own one, and the recipe calls for an 11-inch. And if you've seen me before, we don't want overflows on Paula's kitchen when I'm baking things. So I got this at Amazon. It was like $12.50. It's a nice anodized baking pan for cakes. So I greased it and I lined the bottom with parchment paper. That is what our crust is going to go into. All right. Crust time, and it's just the usual Paula stirring like crazy. So I'm going to put part of the cocoa in and stir a little bit of that into my butter, sugar, and egg mixture. And I'm going to alternate that with some of the flour. Those of you that make cheesecakes a lot, you'll know that most cheesecakes, or a lot of cheesecakes, the bottom layer of the crust is actually made of graham crackers. So already this is very interesting to me because it's going to be made of flour, sugar, and cocoa. So interesting. And I think to make things easier, I needed that half a teaspoon of baking powder. I think I'm going to toss that in with the flour. Make it easier on myself to get that incorporated. A little flour, a little cocoa, and you get the idea. So let me get this all smooth, and then we're going to pat that into the bottom of our baking pan. This made a cookie dough, a rather thick and heavy chocolate cookie dough type thing. Let me put it under the other camera. Take a look at that. It was quite challenging to mix. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pat it into my 11-inch cake pan, and I'm thinking the best way to do that is probably simply to do it by hand because it is quite thick, and I think it'll just mold. So the instructions are to pat it on the bottom of the pan and about 2/3 of the way up the side. And as I said, I did line this with parchment paper, and I also greased it. You could use Pam or shortening, whatever, however you normally grease a cake pan. And then the parchment paper just gives you that little bit of insurance as well. Alrighty, so clean hands here. And let me just say, I think it's going to be quite a thick crust because I have a lot of it. So I've never done this. We'll just kind of work at it together, won't we? by request series where I've never made things before has turned out to be really an adventure. Just this week I was mapping out the rest of the recipes that I'm going to be doing throughout the rest of 2020, kind of wrapping up at the holidays. And for those of you that are keeping track, yes, Durango Dale will get pie.
Pie? Somebody say pie?
And for those of you keeping track, our next up, by request, several of you have asked for it, is I'm going to make enchiladas. Have I ever made enchiladas in this kitchen, Dale?
No, señorita.
No, I have not.
You have not.
But we have Kissy Cat and several people have said, can you please make enchiladas? Senora, I'm married to you.
Yes.
So yes, Senora. So you can all see what I'm doing here. There's almost 2 sticks of butter in this, so it is quite easy to shape and mold. And I'm just going to try to get a nice even thickness to this crust. Alrighty. I think this is pretty good. And can I say this was a heck of a lot easier than rolling out pie crust? Quick correction before we go any further. I realized after I patted the crust into the bottom of the pan that I actually needed to reserve about 1/4 of it that's going to be a crumbled topping. And it was easy enough to just pull that off. It's very buttery and soft. So I have myself just a little bowl that I reserved that's going to go on top. All right, off camera, I assembled all of my filling ingredients and we have them all here. We are going to start with the 2 additional sticks of butter and that little 2 additional tablespoons from the whole pound. I told you we're using the whole pound. We are. So the filling actually calls for 250 grams of butter. So that's 2 sticks plus the 2 tablespoons. That's already in here. And then we're going to stir in or mix in 1 1/4 cup of sugar or 250 grams. So let's do that right now. So if you were paying attention, this is pretty much the same 2 things we started with on our crust, just slightly different quantities. All right, let me get my spatula going. So those are getting creamed together nicely, and then I'm going to fold in my 500 grams of the cottage cheese. Whoops. Mishaps. They always go in the blooper reel at the end of the year, huh? All right, let's drop a little bit of this in. All right, so let's mix this up now. And then we have 3 eggs that are going to go in. This is very interesting. I'm used to using cream cheese for a very creamy texture, but this is actually preserving the curds, even though it's mixing with the butter and sugar. Yeah, you'll be able to see that in the overhead shot. It's very unique. Egg number 1. Egg number 2. It's getting to be a lovely texture. And then egg number 3. Ooh, that almost dived in there, Dale. My fingers are getting gucky. Turn that off for just a second. Okay, the next 2 ingredients I want to talk about briefly. This is very unusual for a cheesecake, but it is calling for 5 tablespoons. Let me double check the equivalent there. 5 40 grams of vanilla pudding powder, and this is not the instant vanilla pudding. This is the kind that you cook on top of the stove. So I think that's going to give the filling a real heft using the pudding powder. And then it also calls for a half a tablespoon of vanilla sugar. Well, we don't have vanilla sugar here in the US, and the equivalent is simply a teaspoon of vanilla extract. So we're going to add those. And then lastly, 1/2 cup of milk. All right, we got a little spitting going on here. Let me stand out of the way. All right, let me mix this well, and then we are going to pour it into our crust. Moved my mixer aside, and I've brought my crust back into frame. So I'm going to pour the filling onto the crust, and wow, this is really I said it was going to be discovery, and it is. This is really amazing. Katrin, you'll have to let me know after the fact if this is the type of result you get or not. I am in the USA using what I hope are similar ingredients. All right, the first thing that I want to clap about, if my hands weren't dirty, is it fit. Next step, I'm going to take my reserved crust, and the instructions are to crumble it onto the top in pieces like a little bit of a garnish. So I will do that. And then it's going into that 320-degree oven for 50 minutes. So, although the instructions say to check it after 40, just in case, because everybody's oven is different and may not be real true to temperature. That is about it. Empty. Alrighty, folks. Moment of truth. It's 2:35. This is going in the oven. I admit, kind of excited about this. I'm going to check it in about 40 minutes. I don't think it'll be done, but we will check it. We will see you then. Excuse me, Dale's making me laugh over here. He's playing director. All right, folks, the differences, I think, across the pond between ingredients, the fact that I couldn't use curd cheese, oven temperature changes, and so on. We actually have baked the cheesecake for 1 hour and 20 minutes, which is a little bit longer than the original called for, but I've been checking it. I've been putting a butter knife in it to see when it was solidifying, and I think we're there. So take a look at this. It is so beautiful. Look at this cake. It is a gorgeous thing. So those chocolate pieces just kind of, they sank for a while, and then they floated back to the top, and they attached themselves to what I think is going to be more or less a crust. So I have to say, this is absolutely beautiful, and we have been smelling this chocolate cheese mixture now for 1 hour and 20 minutes, and we're big fans. So this has to cool in the pan. We're going to refrigerate it, so it's going to be a little while before we taste it, but wow, I am really jazzed by the results so far. This is a beautiful cake. Well, hey, It is now the next morning. In fact, it's Sunday morning. So we just had our breakfast and we are doing our official tasting. We did have a little sliver last night, but we didn't have any cameras.
No, we didn't have any cameras, but it was really good. We wanted to make sure that it came out.
Anyway, here we are for the official tasting. So let me just say, this is an amazing combination of like a brownie, almost a brownie fudge crust, and the topping is sort of like creme brulee. It is an amazingly delicious combination.
It really is. It's just,
and it's a beautiful presentation, with the layers and this light brown kind of this golden crust. Anyway, it is so good.
Oh, wow, is that good? Wow.
It's sweet, but not too sweet.
No.
Like that apple cake I made a couple weeks ago, really, really sweet. This is just right.
It is just unbelievable.
Great with coffee or tea. Absolutely a wonderful, wonderful dessert, and so pretty.
And these little things that you drizzled on top.
Yeah, it's almost like a little cookie.
Yeah, it is.
It's just incredibly good. It's an amazing variation on a cheesecake. I am absolutely in love with it.
Let me just say that when we say that we're doing these for the first time, we are doing these for the first time.
There's no rehearsal.
Yeah. If anything goes wrong, it's just going to be the way it is, because we want it to be. We're getting the recipe, we're putting it out, and we're doing it. Now, Paula did a lot of research on the grams and pounds and all that stuff. And
yeah, and I did make that error about reserving a quarter of the crust, but I caught myself, luckily. But I'm doing it the way you would do it, which would be you're going to read it and you're going to interpret it and make it yourself. So you get the truth.
Right.
Whatever happens in our kitchen, you're seeing.
Yeah. So I would definitely recommend this.
I
right?
love it. It is delicious. Really, really great.
And there's actually another name for this, right?
Yeah, actually, Katrin's husband Mario sent me what they call it, and we'll put that up on the screen.
Yes, and we definitely want to thank her for setting the recipe in. Also, we just want to talk technical just a tiny bit. You'll notice in this video we had a little trouble with the lighting and the focusing, especially on would be this camera here that I'm pointing to here. That's my DJI Osmo. We've been using this camera for almost 2 years now.
Almost 2 years, and we're having a little bit of trouble the last couple of videos with focus and lighting, so we're going to have to investigate that. We do apologize.
Yeah, we're going to have somebody take a look at that and see if they can't fix it. But anyway, the video came out pretty good, I think.
So did the cake.
It did. It was terrific. All right, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Don't forget to hit that notification button and follow us on our social media. Anything else, Paula?
We'll see you in a couple weeks for enchiladas. Olé.
All right, I hope you had a good time. We'll see you next time.
Bye,
Bye-bye, everybody.